Good morning. Let's talk about hindsight and how we, as citizens of America, can shape ourselves a prime future. So, let's start out with a question. Why do we study history? Now, I personally know that anyone who's a student in this room, or perhaps adults, if you've ever looked at a history textbook, you've opened up the first page of chapter 1, and you've looked at the first sentence, and I guarantee you, it probably asks this question, why do we study history? So naturally, we all know the answer. Say it with me now, to learn from past mistakes. That's why we study history. So let's learn some history. In 2008, the financial world crashed. I was in 8th grade. I don't remember it very well, but I'm sure the adults in the audience might. You saw, newsreels with Dow plummets, stock market in tailspin. Nobody was really sure why things were happening the way they were. And they all asked the question, what the heck happened? And that's my hope for today, is that you can leave here knowing what the heck happened and how you can learn from it. First, we have to understand a few terms. A mortgage is when a bank lends money to a home buyer. Most of you know what a mortgage is. Now, there are two types of home buyers. There are prime home buyers who put 20% down on their first home, and they have good credit, meaning that it's likely they'll pay their bills on time. But then there are subprime buyers, buyers that put no money down and have poor credit. They may not pay their bills on time. Then there are mortgage-backed securities, which are securities sold to investors whose values come from mortgages. We'll learn more about those in a minute. And finally, we have default, when a homeowner can no longer pay his or her mortgage. So we had home buyers purchasing mortgages from a bank, and these were the prime home buyers. They had good credit, and they put 20% down. These are the home buyers that banks loved. They pay their payments on time. Everything was good. But the money from these mortgages was tied up in the bank. The bank couldn't touch it. So they said, how can we make money off these good home buyers? Well, let's repackage these mortgages and sell something based on the value called a mortgage-backed security. And the mortgage-backed securities were then sold to investors. And the mortgage-backed securities freed up the capital from the mortgages so the banks could spend money, lend money, do things like that. And when the house values went up, the mortgage-backed securities went up, and investors were very happy. But then investors wanted more, and banks wanted to keep their investors happy. So they began selling more mortgages, and that's where the first mistake was made. In a rush to satisfy the bottom line, the banks then made many mistakes. So we had this idea of home buyers purchasing mortgages and the banks repackaging these mortgages as mortgage-backed securities. So the banks went out and lent more mortgages to home buyers who were subprime. They had bad credit, and they were likely they weren't going to make their payments on their mortgage. I want to stress that fact. If I was a subprime home buyer, I could walk into a bank in 2006, 2007, put no money down, and walk out with a $300,000 check. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's an issue. And as a result, the mortgages and the mortgage-backed securities were polluted. They were tainted a bit. But then the investors said, well, home values are still going up. Let's make more money, bank. Lend more mortgages, please. And so they added the home buyers that were in red, that were very bad. And as a result, the mortgages and the mortgage-backed securities were further polluted. So you'd think that the bank, they were smart. They realized they were lending to high-risk clients. And as rational individuals, we would think, well, they'd stop, right? No. Instead of stopping the bad lending, they bought themselves a safety net called a credit default swap. Now, credit default swap you might have heard of before in the media. And it's a very difficult term to understand, or people would like you to think it is, but in fact, it's very simple. AIG, an insurance group, you might have seen their commercials on TV, sold a safety net to the bank. If the home buyers defaulted, AIG would pay the bank for the bad mortgages and swap for them. So the mortgages would move over to AIG, and AIG would send the bank money. And the bank's balance sheet would be free of the bad mortgages. Now what this did was it allowed the bank to make as many bad mortgages as they wanted and not have to worry about any of the ramifications. I know what you're thinking right now. Why, right? Why would AIG intentionally take on such a risky investment, and why would the bank make the investment in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. But there's an easy one-word answer. Fees. AIG made millions of dollars from the fees associated with credit default swaps. It was pure money. That's what motivated all the bad lending. But then the unexpected happened. Home values dropped. And those subprime home buyers that we talked about, they defaulted on their mortgage, like everyone knew they would. And the credit default swaps kicked in, and AIG paid millions to banks. Then home values dropped further, and the thousands of bad mortgages that AIG was hoping to foreclose on and sell for a profit, they couldn't make their profit back. Then more home buyers defaulted, the really bad ones that everyone knew weren't going to make their payments. They defaulted, and AIG cannot afford to honor its credit default swap obligations. And on September 16, 2008, AIG failed and was bailed out by the government with $85 billion worth of taxpayer money. As a result of these events, we live in a very different financial world. People are much more in tune with the way the markets move and what their 401k or retirement plans are doing. But do not despair, students, because there are two simple actions that you can take to become prime buyers, which is exactly what we want to be as students and young adults in this new financial world. Apply with your parents for a credit card. Build yourself a credit history. That's the first point of how to become a prime home buyer. Now, many students are graduating high school and college, going out into the real world, and they're hoping to buy their own cell phone or maybe buy a new car or pay rent on their new apartment. But the fact is the credit companies are saying, we're not going to give you this lease. We're not going to allow you to purchase this new apartment because you have no credit history. We're not sure if you've ever paid a bill on time. How can we trust you? That's what really came out from 2008, is a lack of trust. So build a credit history. Use your credit card for simple items like gas, and the key is pay off the bill at the end of each month, because that's how you build a good history. And in no time, you will have one worthy of a prime rating. The other thing is very simple. Save money now. It does not matter how you find it. Change from the couch cushions, cash from grandma, it's my personal favorite, a check from your boss. Save it, 10, 15, 20, 25% of the money that you bring in, put it away in a bank account. And by saving money for the future, you can be ready when your bank comes knocking for that down payment on your new car or your new house. You'll be able to satisfy the two requirements to be prime. You can put money down, and you'll have a good credit history. Now, looking back at 2008, things are very different. But looking back, using hindsight, we can turn the events that happened in 2008 into knowledge. We can turn that knowledge into foresight, look to the future, and using foresight, we can turn ourselves and our future into a more financially stable one. Thank you.